Low thunder rumbles. The sky above London was grey that day, heavy, silent, and cruel. Inside the tower, behind glass and guarded by men who didn't understand its history, the diamond lay, glittering coldly under sterile lights. The Kohinoor. To the tourists it was a jewel, to the historians a relic, but to those who know, it was a curse. They say anyone who dares to possess it, any man who calls it his own, will fall. Empires crumble, kings lose their thrones, and bloodlines fade into dust. Only women, it is said, can wear it and live without ruin. And yet, for centuries, kings fought and killed for it. Nations invaded, brothers betrayed, and entire civilizations paid the price for its cold, shimmering beauty, soft chanting in the background. But how did this single stone become the most cursed jewel in human history? To understand the curse, we must return to where it all began, to a time long before the British crown, before the Mughals, before the Sikhs, to a time when the diamond was born, not in royal halls but in the earth's deepest wounds. Wind blowing across barren plains, somewhere in the ancient lands of Golconda, modern-day Andhra Pradesh, under the crushing heat of a merciless sun, miners chipped away at stone and dust. They didn't know what they were searching for, but one day, legend says, a faint glow emerged from the mud, a flash so bright it burned their eyes. A boy held it first. He ran home with the strange, blinding gem, thinking it was a gift from the gods. But that night his village burned. The boy vanished, and the diamond passed into the hands of kings. Thus began the journey of the Kohinoor, mountain of light, silence. It would travel through dynasties and deserts soaked in blood, betrayal, and greed, each ruler believing he could master its power. But none ever did. The earliest records trace it to the Kakatiya dynasty, around the 13th century. They placed it in the temple of a goddess, as an offering, not as treasure, because they believed something this radiant could not belong to man. It belonged to the divine. But when the temple fell to invaders, the diamond was stolen, ripped from the goddess's statue. That act, some say, awoke the curse. Muffled war drums. The invader was Alauddin Khilji, the Sultan of Delhi, a man whose ambition had no ceiling. He conquered kingdoms, enslaved rulers, and in 1310 he took Warangal, and with it, the diamond. In his hands the stone glimmered like a fragment of the sun. He believed it was a symbol of eternal rule, a promise that his empire would last forever. But eternity has a cruel sense of humor. Within years, Alauddin's empire began to rot. His trusted generals rebelled. His sons turned on each other. The once mighty Delhi Sultanate descended into chaos. The diamond, meanwhile, passed from one ruler to the next, each believing he could defy the curse, each falling to ruin, soft echoing of distant swords. Centuries later, it would find its way into the hands of the great conqueror, Babur, founder of the Mughal Empire. He received it after his victory over Ibrahim Lodi at Panipat. Babur wrote of it in his memoirs, calling it a priceless jewel of unmatched brilliance. But soon after, his beloved son Humayun nearly lost the empire his father built. The diamond-yes legend grew, whispered in the Mughal courts. To hold the Kohinoor is to invite destiny's wrath. Yet it remained within the Mughals for generations, shimmering on crowns, swords, and thrones. It gleamed on the peacock throne of Shah Jahan, the same ruler who built the Taj Mahal for love, and then watched his own son overthrow and imprison him. Even in his final years, when Shah Jahan stared at the reflection of the Taj from his prison window, they say the diamond was still in the empire's treasury, locked away, as if it too were serving a sentence. Soft rain against stone. And so the diamond became both a symbol of glory and doom, a paradox carved in crystal. Wherever it went, power followed, and so did destruction. Then came Nadir Shah, the ruthless Persian invader who stormed Delhi in 1739. He took everything, the peacock throne, the jewels, and the Kohinoor itself. It is said that when he first laid eyes on it, the gem's light reflected on his face like fire. He whispered one word: Kohinoor. And from that name, the legend was reborn. But Nadir Shah's triumph didn't last. Within years, his own generals betrayed him. He was murdered in his sleep, and the diamond vanished once again, soaked in his blood. Horses galloping, desert winds howling. From Persia, it found its way to Afghanistan, to the hands of Ahmad Shah Durrani, founder of the Durrani Empire. A warrior king, brave and ruthless, he carried the stone as a talisman into battle. Under his rule, Afghanistan grew powerful, but after his death, his descendants tore each other apart in civil war. The curse had struck again. By the early 19th century, the diamond reached the one ruler who would etch his name into history: Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Lion of Punjab. He was unlike any who came before him. Charismatic, fearless, a unifier of the Sikh Empire. To his people, he was more than a king. He was a symbol of pride and sovereignty. When the Kohinoor came into his possession in 1813, it wasn't just a jewel. It was destiny reclaiming what had been taken from India centuries ago. Drums rise slowly. Under Ranjit Singh, the diamond once again shone on an Indian throne. The empire thrived, stretching from the Khyber Pass to the Sutlej. The streets of Lahore pulsed with wealth and power. For a moment, it seemed as though the curse had been broken, but destiny never forgets. In 1839, Ranjit Singh fell ill. On his deathbed, he ordered that the Kohinoor be donated to the Jagannath Temple in Puri, to return it to the gods from whom it had been stolen centuries earlier. But his courtiers ignored his wish. They kept the diamond within the royal treasury, hidden in greed. And that single act of disobedience, reignited the curse. Within 10 years, the Sikh Empire crumbled. His heirs were assassinated, betrayed, or manipulated by the British. The empire that once terrified its enemies fell into chaos. Silence, then faint ticking of a clock. In 1849, the British East India Company annexed Punjab. The boy king Maharaja Duleep Singh, just 10 years old, was forced to surrender everything: his land, his crown, and the Kohinoor. The stone was taken to England as tribute, but in truth it was theft, the final act of humiliation. When the ship carrying the Kohinoor left Indian shores, storm clouds gathered. The voyage was plagued by sickness, mutiny, and death. Even the sea seemed to resist the diamond's journey westward. Yet it arrived in London, unbroken, gleaming as if mocking every life it had destroyed. Soft church bells echo. When Queen Victoria received it, she was told of its legend, that it brings misfortune to men but spares women. So she had it recut, reshaped, and set in her crown. And from that day on, no male monarch of Britain ever wore the Kohinoor again. But still, strange shadows followed. Queen Victoria's empire reached its peak, but at its heart, rebellions burned. India rose in fury in 1857. Blood stained the same soil where the diamond once shone freely. Some say the gods were reclaiming their vengeance. Thunder rolls again, and today, as it sits behind glass, untouched and untouchable, the curse is still whispered. Because every nation that has owned it, from the Mughals to the Persians, from the Afghans to the British, has fallen. Every ruler who claimed it met tragedy. The Kohinoor does not belong to man. It never did. Silence. And yet, what if I told you that its curse is not just myth, but evidence of something far darker, something buried deep within the pages of colonial history, erased, hidden, and forgotten? Because the true curse of the Kohinoor was never the diamond. It was the greed of those who wanted to own it. Wind fades into silence. To be continued. Soft rain against glass, London, 1850, the city of fog and empire. Beneath the gray sky, the Kohinoor rests within a velvet-lined box, silent yet alive. Carried across oceans, soaked in history and sin, it now lies in the heart of Britain. But the air around it feels wrong. Heavy, electric. It has traveled from gods to kings, from thrones to vaults, and now it belongs to an empire built not on faith or bloodline, But on conquest, the British called it civilization, others called it theft. When Queen Victoria first saw the diamond, it did not sparkle as expected. It was dull, flawed, unimpressive. Courtiers whispered that the gem seemed to resist her gaze. But Victoria, ever proud, refused to accept defeat from a stone. She ordered it to be recut, reshaped by the best jewelers in London. The process took months. As the diamond was cut, its size shrank by half, but its brilliance multiplied. Yet as the light grew brighter, the shadows deepened. Workers in the cutting room spoke of strange accidents, a craftsman's hand trembling uncontrollably, a sudden fall of tools, whispers that the air grew colder when the diamond was touched. The foreman dismissed it as superstition. But one by one, those who worked on the Kohinoor fell ill or met untimely deaths. Silence, faint tolling of a bell. And when the final cut was made, a blade slipped. A shard of diamond pierced the jeweler's skin. Within days, he was dead. The newspapers never printed his name, but the curse had already found its next story. Because far from London, in the quiet exile of a small boy, the true tragedy was unfolding. Soft Indian flute echoes faintly. Maharaja Singh, once the ruler of the great Sikh empire, now just a child stripped of his heritage. At 10 years old, he watched as his family was torn apart, his mother imprisoned, his kingdom sold piece by piece to the East India Company. They took his throne, his flag, and finally, his soul. He was sent to England, raised not as a king, but as a gentleman. Baptized as a Christian, dressed in British silks, trained to smile and obey. The British called it civilizing. But in truth, they were rewriting his identity, turning the Lion of Punjab into a pet of the empire. When he arrived at Buckingham Palace, Queen Victoria took a liking to him. She called him her Black Prince. To her, he was exotic, charming, obedient, a living symbol of Britain's conquest. He dined with royalty, hunted with princes, and was photographed beside the same diamond that had once sat upon his father's throne. Low hum builds. Imagine that moment. A boy king gazing at the Kohinoor, shining in the hands of the very people who stole his empire. He smiled for the cameras, but behind that smile burned centuries of humiliation. They say Duleep would stare at the diamond for hours in silence. Sometimes he would whisper in Punjabi, words no one could understand. Servants claimed he once said, "It still belongs to us." But the empire had no room for sentiment. As he grew older, the illusion began to crack. The more he learned of his past, the more he realized the truth. He was not a guest of the empire. He was its trophy. Fire crackling. In 1860, he traveled across Europe, restless, disillusioned. Letters from India reached him, reminding him of who he once was. One night, sitting alone by the fire, he wrote in his diary, "I have been robbed not only of my kingdom, but of my mother, my faith, and my name." He sought to return to India, to reclaim what was lost. But every attempt was blocked by the British government. His correspondence was censored, his allies silenced. And when he tried to meet his mother, Maharani Jindan Kaur, once the fierce queen of Punjab, she was frail, blind, broken by years of captivity. When they finally embraced after years apart, she placed her trembling hands on his face and whispered, "Never forget who you are." Those words changed everything. Thunder echoes softly. After her death, something inside him shattered. He began to see through the empire's illusions, the polite smiles, the titles, the civility. Beneath it all, he saw chains. He converted back to Sikhism. He renounced the British crown, and he swore that one day he would return the Kohinoor to his homeland. But the empire had other plans. Soft footsteps in empty hallway. They began watching him. Every letter, every movement, every conversation. His friends were bribed or exiled. His finances were strangled. Duleep was reduced from prince to pauper. His once lavish estate sold, his reputation smeared. In desperation, he reached out to Russia, Britain as rival power, hoping they would help him reclaim his throne. It was a dangerous gamble. If caught, it would mean treason. And they caught him. The British spies intercepted his letters. The rebellion was crushed before it began. Duleep was placed under permanent surveillance, a king turned prisoner without bars. Silence, faint ticking clock. He died in 1893, alone in a Paris hotel room. No crown, no homeland, no family. And at the very moment of his death, they say, the Kohinoor's display glass cracked in the Tower of London. The guards dismissed it as temperature stress. But those who believe in curses knew better. The Lion of Punjab had fallen. The Empire of Shadows had claimed another soul. Low-string music builds. But what even the British dignity realized was that the curse of the Kohinoor was no longer confined to kings. It had begun to seep into the heart of the empire itself. For soon after Duleep's death, the signs began to appear. Famine, rebellion, loss. The empire that once ruled a quarter of the world started to fracture. From India to Ireland, from Africa to Asia, the subjects of the crown began to rise. The jewel in the crown of the British Empire was glowing brighter than ever, but its light was feeding on something darker. Because the Kohinoor was never just a diamond. It was a mirror, reflecting the greed, arrogance, and sins of those who possessed it. Wind howling across barren fields. Decades passed. The world changed. The empire that once boasted, "The sun never sets," began to fade into twilight. By the mid-20th century, Britain stood battered, haunted by wars, debt, and the loss of colonies. And through it all, the Kohinoor remained. Silent, watching, waiting. Each new monarch who wore it did so carefully, superstitiously. None dared defy the legend that men who claim the stone will fall. It became tradition. The diamond would only be worn by the queen, never by the king. Soft murmurs of a crowd fade into solemn silence. And when the coffin of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, passed through the streets of London in 2002, the Kohinoor glittered atop her crown one last time, the cursed mountain of light shimmering over a world that had long forgotten its victims. But the story was not over. Because while Britain kept the diamond behind glass, the voices demanding its return grew louder. India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, all claimed it as their own, each with a story, each with blood in its history. And in that battle for ownership, something strange began to happen. Low heartbeat sound. The curse, once attached to kings, began to haunt nations. India's demands were met with silence. Afghanistan's governments fell one after another. Britain itself faced crisis after crisis, wars, loss, division, decline. Coincidence? Or the ancient curse finding new vessels? Silence stretches, then faint wind returns. The diamond, once soaked in royal blood, now lay at the heart of a global moral reckoning. No one could truly claim it without facing the weight of its past. And yet, deep inside the Tower of London, surrounded by steel, glass, and cameras, the Kohinoor gleams on, untouched, unrepentant, as if waiting for its next chapter. Because legends never die. They sleep. And sometimes, they wake. Thunder rumbles. In the years to come, the world would witness new controversies, new curses, as if the stone was still whispering its defiance through history. And one question would echo louder than ever. Who truly owns the Kohinoor? The one who holds it, or the one who bled for it? Silence. To be continued. Soft wind through old stone corridors. Time moves differently for empires. For the conquerors, centuries can pass like dreams. For the conquered, each day can feel like eternity. The Kohinoor sat silently as history reshaped itself around it. Behind glass, under the watch of guards, it witnessed revolutions, wars, and the slow decay of the empire that had stolen it. But even in silence it spoke, not in words but in weight. Every glint of light on its surface carried the reflection of millions who had suffered in the shadows of empire. Every sparkle was a scream buried beneath colonial pride. Slow, solemn drumbeat fades in. The 20th century arrived, and with it the unraveling of the British illusion. The empire that once claimed to bring light to the world now found itself drowning in darkness. Rebellion, famine, poverty, and resistance spread across its colonies. But nowhere did the cry for freedom burn brighter than in India, the land from which the Kohinoor had been torn. From Bengal to Punjab, voices rose like storms. Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolence, Bhagat Singh's fire, the countless nameless souls who marched, bled, and fell so their children could breathe as free people. Wind rises softly. The Kohinoor remained untouched through it all, displayed in royal exhibitions as a symbol of Britain's glory, while outside the palace walls, millions starved. During the Bengal famine of 1943, as millions of Indians perished in hunger, British officers toasted champagne beneath chandeliers that glittered with stolen jewels. The curse, it seemed, had shifted its target, no longer striking kings, but haunting empires built on their arrogance. Soft whisper of prayer. And then, after centuries of struggle, the inevitable came. August 15th, 1947. India awoke to freedom, but even freedom came with pain. The British departure carved the subcontinent apart, dividing land, hearts, and histories. India and Pakistan were born, but millions died in the fire of partition. Trains arrived at stations filled not with passengers but with corpses. Rivers ran red, and above it all in the Tower of London, the Kohinoor glittered, indifferent, silent, untouched. Some say the diamond's curse had taken its final revenge, not on Britain, not on kings, but on the very soil that birthed it. Silence. When the British flag lowered over Delhi for the last time, many believed the curse would end. But it didn't. It simply changed its form. For even after freedom, the ghosts of empire remained. The Kohinoor became more than a jewel. It became a wound. Every nation that had once possessed it demanded its return. India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. Each claimed rightful ownership. Each demanded justice. And Britain, with its cold legal language, said no. They argued that the diamond had been gifted, that Maharaja Singh, the boy king, had willingly surrendered it. But history remembers differently. He was a child, a prisoner, a pawn. And what is a gift from a man with no freedom? Crowd murmurs in anger. The demands for the Kohinoor's return echoed across decades. Every Indian prime minister since independence has asked for it. Each time the British refused. Each time the diamond's silence grew heavier, as if feeding on the unhealed resentment between nations. Low rumble of thunder. In Pakistan, too, the diamond is claimed, for it once rested in Lahore, the jewel of Ranjit Singh's empire. In Afghanistan, the descendants of Durrani warriors call it theirs. And in Iran, the followers of Nadir Shah's bloodline whisper that it was stolen from them first. The Kohinoor, once a symbol of conquest, became the heart of a new kind of war, a war of memory. Soft piano begins to play. As the 20th century faded into the 21st, the diamond remained locked in its glass tomb, a relic of crimes that modern Britain struggled to face. Museums began to question their collections. Statues were toppled. Debates flared in parliaments and universities. Should the treasures of empire be returned? Should the ghosts of the past finally be laid to rest? And through all of it, the Kohinoor's name kept resurfacing, like a wound refusing to close. Soft voices arguing fade in. Parliament murmurs. In 2016, the Indian government filed a formal request for its return once again. British officials hesitated. Some said, it belongs to the world. Others said, it belongs to the crown. But deep down, everyone knew, it belongs to history. The curse, it seems, had evolved. No longer bound to blood and throne, it had become a reflection of moral debt, a mirror showing humanity its greed. Wind whispers through empty museum halls. As the diamond lay behind glass, millions of tourists passed it each year, staring at it, taking photos, gasping in awe. None could hear the echoes in its silence. The chants of the enslaved miners, the cries of the mothers of Punjab, the laughter of kings who thought they could own eternity. But the diamond remembers. Silence stretches long, almost unbearable. Each empire that claimed it, the Khiljis, the Mughals, the Persians, the Afghans, the Sikhs, the British, all fell. And perhaps the diamond was not cursed at all. Perhaps it was justice. A beautiful, merciless justice that no man could control. Soft chime of a clock at midnight. Today, the debate continues. India has renewed its request. Pakistan has threatened legal action. Even Afghanistan, torn by war, has demanded its return. And Britain? It hides behind the law, behind centuries of silence, guarding not just a diamond, but a truth it cannot face. Because to return the Kohinoor is to admit that empires were built on theft, that glory was born from blood, and that the light of civilization was kindled by the fire of oppression, low whispering wind. The Kohinoor is more than a stone. It is a question the world still refuses to answer. Can a nation truly move forward while it clings to the spoils of its sins? Thunder in the distance. And as new tensions rise between India and Britain, from trade to politics, from diplomacy to dignity, the ghost of the Kohinoor hovers like a shadow between them. Even today, when Indian leaders visit London, their eyes inevitably fall upon that diamond, locked away, glittering behind glass, like a reminder that history's wounds never truly heal. Soft heartbeat sound fades in. But what if the curse has not yet finished its work? What if its light is still searching for the next empire to fall? Because every empire believes it is different. Every empire believes it can escape its fate, until one day, it doesn't. The sound of a crack, like glass breaking, echoing slowly. In 2025, a minor incident in the Tower of London made headlines. A small fracture appeared in one of the display cases near the Kohinoor. Security called it an accident. Others called it a warning, and maybe it was both. The world's eyes turned once again toward the diamond. Social media erupted. Hashtags trended. Demands resurfaced. Protests began. It was as if the stone had awakened. Silence, faint whisper. Return it. The curse, it seems, was not content to rest in history. It wanted to be heard again, through nations, through voices, through memory. And as new fires of rivalry burned between India and the West, one truth became impossible to ignore. The Kohinoor was never truly stolen. It was merely waiting for its next chapter. Silence stretches, to be continued. Wind howling over the River Thames, London, present day. The city glows under artificial lights, its skyline a monument to progress. Yet beneath its modern brilliance, the weight of history still lingers. Silent, invisible, unrepentant. Inside the Tower of London, beyond steel gates and laser alarms, a single glass case stands under constant surveillance. Within it, the Kohinoor, the mountain of light, still gleams. But those who guard it know something has changed. Low static hum, flickering light. They say some nights the alarms trigger without cause. Security cameras distort. The air turns colder near the case. A whisper of static fills the room, like a voice trying to speak through time. Most dismiss it as imagination, but the old guard, they know better. They've seen men leave their posts pale as ghosts, trembling. They've heard the stories of empires falling, kings dying, nations dividing, and they know that curses do not die. They simply wait. Silence, then faint echo of chanting. Across the ocean in India, the past is waking too. In Delhi, a heated debate rises once more. Politicians, historians, and activists demanding the return of the Kohinoor. Television panels roar, hashtags trend. The demand has become more than political. It's personal, emotional, almost spiritual. To many, the Kohinoor is not a jewel. It is a wound. A reminder of humiliation, colonial theft, and centuries of silence. And now, for the first time, that silence is cracking. Footsteps echo in a government hall. In 2025, the Indian Parliament debates a resolution to formally reclaim the diamond. Voices thunder across the chamber. It belongs to our ancestors. It belongs to the people. The motion passes, the demand is official. But in London, the response is swift and cold. The British government issues a statement. The Kohinoor is a part of the British crown jewels. Its ownership is non-negotiable. The world watches as two nations, once master and colony, now stand face to face, not in war but in history's mirror. Soft rumble of thunder. The tension spreads like fire. In Pakistan, news anchors proclaim the diamond as part of Lahore's heritage. In Afghanistan, a new government claims it was taken from their ancestors. Iran, too, repeats its centuries-old claim. The Kohinoor has become more than a gemstone. It is a global ghost, haunting 5 nations at once. But amid the noise of politics and pride, strange things begin to happen. Wind whistling through ancient stones. In early spring, a small electrical fire breaks out in the Tower of London. No one is hurt. No major damage reported. But the flame started near the Jewel House, the very hall where the Kohinoor rests. CCTV footage later reveals something bizarre. Moments before the fire, all cameras facing the diamond went black for exactly 13 seconds. No explanation, no malfunction, nothing. British tabloids call it the Curse Awakens. Officials dismiss it as conspiracy, but the whispers spread. And halfway across the world, in Punjab, India, a farmer reports seeing a strange beam of light fall from the sky one night, hitting the ruins of an old fort once belonging to Maharaja Ranjit Singh. The next morning, the ground there is scorched yet untouched by fire. Local priests say they heard chanting in the wind, words in ancient Persian. Coincidence, or something stirring after centuries of silence? Low drumming, like a distant heartbeat. Meanwhile, social media explodes with theories. Some claim the diamond is cursed with an ancient code, vibrations that affect anyone who tries to possess it. Others call it karma, history's revenge, and a few say it's not even the real diamond in the tower, that the true Kohinoor was hidden long ago, replaced with a replica to protect the world from its wrath. But the truth, as always, lies buried under centuries of secrets. Soft whisper of wind through corridors. Back in London, a historian named Dr. Amara Nadir, of Indian descent, begins researching the Kohinoor's origins. She's fascinated by its missing chapters, by the lives it destroyed. One night, working late at the British Museum archives, she finds a letter, yellowed, fragile, sealed with an unfamiliar crest. The letter is dated 1849, the year the British took Punjab. It is written by an East India Company officer to his superior. "Sir, we have secured the stone, but I must confess, there was resistance. The boy was in tears, and the Queen, his mother, cursed us. She said the diamond carries the soul of her ancestors, that whoever holds it in greed shall suffer until it is returned to its rightful blood." Amara reads those lines again and again. Her pulse quickens. A chill runs down her spine. Soft whisper, "Until it is returned." Days later, she visits the Tower of London. As she stands before the Kohinoor, the light seems to bend, just slightly. For a brief second, she thinks she sees something inside it, a reflection not of herself but of another face, a face with a crown and tears of fire. She stumbles back. A guard asks if she's all right. She nods, trembling. But deep inside, she knows something isn't right. Because the curse, it seems, is no longer content with history. It wants witnesses. Low hum intensifies. Within months, her findings spread online, fueling the movement. Hashtags like Kridar return the Kohinoor trend worldwide. Protests erupt outside British embassies across Asia. Celebrities, historians, and citizens unite under one demand: return what was stolen. But the British government remains unmoved. They argue that history cannot be rewritten. Yet the curse does not ask for permission. Sound of rain over London streets. That winter, strange storms sweep across the UK, flooding cities, lightning striking near royal landmarks. In one bizarre incident, The lights of the Tower of London flicker for 7 straight minutes during a live broadcast. When power returns, a faint crack appears on the display glass of the Kohinoor case. The guards swear no one touched it. The engineers find no fault, and the crack is shaped eerily like a tear. Silence. As news spreads, old myths return to life. Priests in India say the gods are reclaiming what's theirs. Spiritual leaders in Pakistan call it divine justice. But scientists, they have no explanation. And yet, amid all the chaos, one truth begins to emerge. The Kohinoor has always reflected its owner's fate. It shone brightest in times of greed, and cracked whenever someone forgot its cost. Heartbeat slows. Deep voice of narrator lowers. The world stands divided. Britain clings to its legacy. India demands reparation. Pakistan calls for justice. And the diamond, ancient, silent, eternal, waits. Because perhaps the curse was never meant to destroy kings or empires. Perhaps it was meant to remind humanity that nothing stolen can ever bring peace. Low chanting builds in background. But this story is not over yet, because deep inside the tower, beneath layers of history and stone, there is something else. A vault, long sealed, holding documents never shown to the public. And within those forgotten papers lies a revelation, a secret about the Kohinoor that could rewrite everything we know about the British Empire, about India's past, and about the curse itself. Drums rise suddenly, intense, echoing heartbeat. What if the Kohinoor we see today is not the real one? What if the true diamond, the original cursed stone, never left India at all? Silence and then a faint whisper, barely audible. The light that was stolen will one day return. Thunder cracks violently. Screen fades to black. To be continued.